Now we're going to talk about naming molecular compounds. These are not ionic. And when the first step in naming is always identifying. We are going to learn how to name binary ionic molecular compounds. And these are also sometimes called covalent compounds. And that's what I used on, that's not what I want. That's what I used on the worksheet. I should change that to make these agree. I'm sorry about that. They're also called covalent compounds. These have two nonmetals. There's no metals in these, and they only have two elements. There are a whole bunch of other molecular compounds that have more than two elements. We're not going to learn how to name those. We're going to limit ourselves to two nonmetals. So their names take this form: a prefix plus the name of the first element. It's a nonmetal, but it's going to pretend that it's a metal and not change its name. And then a prefix and the name of the second element with the ending changed to "-ide". So this is going to do the same thing that the nonmetal ions did. Oh, no, wait, good. Because there aren't any charges to give us a clue about how many of each ion there are, because there aren't any ions, we need prefixes, and we need to tell ourselves or tell each other how many there are using prefixes. So you need to know the meanings of these prefixes. Many of these you might be familiar with. Mono means one, di means two, tri means three. A triangle has three sides. A triforce is a triangle, right? Tetra, you might not have encountered. Have you played Tetris or heard of Tetris? Tetris is a game where you drop little clusters of 4 blocks. All those little clusters were 4 squares. Tetra means 4. Penta is 5, like a pentagon has 5 sides. A hexagon has 6 sides. Hepta is weird, that's 7. And there's octa for 8, nona for 9, and deca for 10. When there's just one of the first element, we usually leave off the mono. So if we were going to look at CO2 and name that, we'd say, okay, the first element's name is carbon, and then we're going to put a prefix here to tell how many there are. There's only one, so monocarbon. Well, chemists have this thing about the number 1. We don't write it unless we absolutely have to. So we're not going to write mono unless we have to either. So we're going to leave mono off for the first element only. And then O is oxygen. So oxygen changes her name to oxide. There are 2 of them, and so it's dioxide. So we put this together as carbon dioxide. Most compounds have 2 words in their name, just like most people go by a first and last name. But there are some people who go by 3 names, and there are others, like Cher, who goes by 1 name, right? Let's look at this one. N2O. It's also known as laughing gas. That's dinitrogen monoxide. There are 2 nitrogens, so dinitrogen. There's 1 oxygen, monoxide. We don't usually drop mono for the second one. Now, what happened to the O? So, monoxide. Doesn't that look weird?
Yeah.
Monoxide? What is that? We often, but not always, oops, I crossed out the wrong O. Not that it really matters. We often, but not always, drop the ending vowel on the prefix if the prefix ends in a vowel and the element name begins with a vowel. So this is hard for students because there's not a great pattern. And some of them, I've seen it both ways, where people drop the vowel or they don't drop the vowel. So I'm not going to mark your papers wrong if you don't drop it or you do. I just want to tell you about it so that you'll understand why sometimes those vowels go missing. So we drop it in monoxide, but we don't drop it in triiodide. And I don't really have a great explanation for you. just because.